The steady hum of the airport was like a living thing, a symphony of hurried footsteps, echoing announcements, and rolling suitcases dragging across polished floors. Dallas-Fort Worth was always alive, always pulsing with stories. Families reuniting, lovers parting, businessmen chasing meetings. And among them, walking calmly through the chaos with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove, was Marcus Williams. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that seemed to drink in the light around him, Marcus wasn't just another passenger rushing to catch his flight. His stride was unhurried, his gaze sharp, his posture regal without arrogance. At 52, with streaks of silver woven through his close-cut hair, he had the kind of presence that made people pause, even if they didn't know why. He looked like a man in command of his own world, and truth be told, he was. Marcus wasn't just wealthy. He wasn't just successful. He was the kind of powerful that moved silently, the kind that didn't need to announce itself, the kind that made decisions which rippled across industries. But none of that mattered here. Not in this airport, not on this flight. To most, he was just another passenger with a boarding pass and a destination. Just another face in the sea. He arrived at the gate for Flight 2847, nonstop to New York. The line was long, a mixture of tired travelers, restless children, and business types impatiently checking their watches. Marcus waited his turn, holding his leather carry-on in a ticket marked first class, seat 2A. The gate agent, bring the entire plane to a halt. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if the story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with a friend. Now let's continue. Jessica was young, efficient, and tired. Her smile was painted on, the kind that had been practiced into muscle memory after hundreds of passengers and countless complaints. But when Marcus handed her his boarding pass, her expression faltered just slightly. She glanced at him, then down at the ticket, then back again. "Sir," she said, her tone clipped but professional, This is a first-class ticket." "Yes," Marcus replied calmly, his voice smooth as velvet. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering there. "Do you have any identification to go with this?" Marcus didn't flinch. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his driver's license, and placed it beside the ticket. "Marcus Williams," he said evenly. "Seat 2A." Jessica studied both for longer than necessary. Passengers behind him began to sigh and shift, impatience mounting. Finally, with a reluctant nod, she scanned his boarding pass and handed it back. "Enjoy your flight," she said, though her voice carried no warmth. As Marcus walked down the jet bridge, he could feel it, the weight of eyes on his back. Whispers already starting. The same old story written in 1,000 silent stares. First class wasn't meant for him, not in their eyes. He found his seat, tucked his carry-on neatly overhead, and sat down with deliberate calm. The leather was soft, the air scented faintly of citrus and wealth. Around him, other first-class passengers settled into their places. A woman with pearls glanced at him twice before looking away. A man in a navy blazer shifted uncomfortably, pretending to read his newspaper. Marcus leaned back, closed his eyes, and listened to the murmurs. He had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the loudest weapon. Minutes later, Jessica stepped onto the plane. Her eyes swept the cabin until they landed on him. Her smile was gone now. "Sir," she said sharply, "I'll need to see your boarding pass again." The cabin quieted. Curious eyes turned toward them. Marcus opened his eyes slowly, meeting hers with a gaze that didn't waver. He reached into his pocket and handed her the ticket once more. Jessica frowned. "This doesn't seem right," she muttered. "Are you sure you purchased this seat?" A ripple went through the cabin. The pearl-draped woman leaned forward, eager to watch. The man in the navy blazer lowered his paper. Phones began to appear discreetly, screens glowing as passengers started recording. Marcus's voice was calm, almost disarmingly so. "Yes, I am sure. Is there a problem?" Jessica's lips tightened. "Sir, I'm going to need to verify this with the captain. Please remain seated." And with that, she turned sharply on her heel, muttering something into her radio. The tension in the cabin thickened, heavy and suffocating. Passengers whispered, the faint sounds of digital clicks capturing every second. Marcus remained still, his hands folded in his lap, his gaze fixed ahead. He had expected this. He had felt it from the moment her eyes flickered at the gate. And though he sat in silence, a storm was already gathering. One that would, within the next 12 minutes, the hum of the engines deepened. The cabin door closed. The crew hurried through their motions. But everyone's eyes kept flicking to seat 2A. To the man who didn't belong. To the man who wasn't supposed to be there. Marcus exhaled softly, as though he had been holding his breath all morning. 12 minutes, he whispered under his breath, almost too quiet for anyone to hear. That's all it'll take. And he was right. The air inside the cabin grew heavier, though the temperature hadn't changed. Marcus could feel the shift, an invisible current of judgment, suspicion, and discomfort that now swirled around him like a storm cloud waiting to break. He didn't move. Stillness was its own kind of power, and Marcus knew how to wield it. The sound of approaching footsteps on the jet bridge pulled every eye toward the front. Then he appeared, Captain Derek Morrison, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair tucked neatly beneath his cap. The man carried himself with the authority of 23 years in the cockpit. Passengers relaxed at his presence. Here was the man in charge, the one who would settle things. Which passenger? The captain asked. His voice was low. Steady, Jessica pointed immediately. Seat 2A. Marcus didn't flinch as the captain's gaze found him. For a moment, the two men regarded each other silently, one in a uniform that represented order, the other in a suit that radiated unspoken influence. Sir, Captain Morrison said, stepping closer, there seems to be some confusion about your seat. Could I see your boarding pass again? Marcus held it out, steady hands, unwavering eyes. Of course. The captain studied it, brow furrowing slightly. Everything looked legitimate. The ticket, the name, the seat assignment. There was no discrepancy. Yet Jessica leaned in, whispering just loud enough for nearby passengers and the dozens of recording phones to catch. Captain, this doesn't feel right. Look at him. Does he really seem like a first-class passenger to you? A hush swept through the cabin. The words hung in the air like smoke. Impossible to ignore, impossible to take back. Marcus felt it. The collective intake of breath, the subtle shift as people realized what she had implied. A few passengers shook their heads, muttering under their breath. Others raised their phones higher, capturing the moment with a mixture of outrage and fascination. The captain's jaw tightened, but he didn't correct her. Instead, he turned back to Marcus. Sir, I'll need another form of identification, something to confirm this ticket belongs to you. The request might have sounded reasonable in another context, but here, after Jessica's slip, it carried the sting of doubt, of accusation. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus reached into his chest pocket. The movement was precise, unhurried. Passengers leaned forward, curious, anxious. He withdrew not just his license this time, but a gleaming black American Express Centurion card, its matte surface catching the cabin light. He placed it on the tray table without a word. A ripple moved through the cabin. Those who knew, knew. The Centurion card wasn't handed out, it was invited. It wasn't for the wealthy, it was for the elite, the rarest of the rare. Marcus's voice was quiet, yet it carried across the hushed cabin. Will that suffice, Captain? Morrison's eyes flicked from the card to the man holding it. Doubt wavered there, replaced briefly by something else. A flash of unease, of recognition. But Jessica pressed on. Phones trembled in the hands of passengers who couldn't believe what they had just heard. Captain Morrison stiffened. Sir, that is not your decision to make. But Marcus's eyes didn't waver. He checked his watch. 12 minutes. That's all it would take. And while the captain bristled, trying to decide whether to call ground security, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out casually, glanced at the screen, and let a small, knowing smile play at his lips. The caller ID read, Southwest Airlines Executive Board. Urgent. The storm was about to break. The glow of the phone screen seemed to cut through the tension in the cabin. Passengers craned their necks, curious, their cameras angled discreetly, or not so discreetly, toward Marcus in seat 2A. Jessica's arms were crossed now, her chest rising and falling with quickened breaths, the certainty she clung to beginning to crack. Captain Morrison frowned. "Who's calling you can wait, sir. I need your cooperation now." Marcus's eyes never left the captain's as he held the phone loosely in his hand, the faint vibration buzzing against his palm. He let it ring once more, twice before answering. His voice was low, deliberate, and every word carried in the silence of that suspended moment. "This is Marcus Williams." The hush was so complete you could hear the faint crackle of the line. Then a voice came through, audible enough that nearby passengers caught snippets. Urgent, respectful. "Mr. Williams, we've been alerted to an incident on Flight 2847. Do you need us to intervene?" Jessica froze. The captain's brows furrowed deeply. Passengers exchanged bewildered looks. Who was this man that the executive board was calling mid-boarding? Marcus's lips curved into a smile, subtle but sharp. "Not yet," he replied, "but stay on standby." He ended the call with the kind of calm finality that spoke louder than shouting ever could. Jessica's confidence faltered. "Executive board?" she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Her eyes darted to the captain, searching for reassurance that wasn't there. Morrison adjusted his cap. "Sir, who exactly are you?" Marcus leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the armrest, his tone quiet but unwavering. "The man who signs your paycheck." The words landed like a thunderclap. Gas rippled through the cabin. A woman in 3B slapped her hand over her mouth. The man in the navy blazer dropped his paper entirely, leaning in with wide eyes. And those filming couldn't type fast enough, their live stream comment sections exploding. Jessica laughed nervously, though her voice cracked. "You expect us to believe that? That you're… what? Some executive?" Marcus's gaze pinned her in place. "Not some executive," he corrected. "The chairman of this airline." The weight of the reveal crashed over the cabin like a tidal wave. Passengers whispered furiously. Some began applauding under their breath, others shook their heads in disbelief, and the live stream, now pushing well over 200,000 viewers, lit up with shock, outrage, and vindication. The captain's face drained of color. He took a half step back, the enormity of the situation sinking in. "Mr. Williams, I didn't realize—" "You didn't need to realize," Marcus interrupted calmly. "What you needed to do was treat me like any other passenger who bought his ticket fairly." His eyes slid to Jessica, cold steel now. "What you needed to do was your job without prejudice." Jessica's lips trembled, her eyes darting nervously around the cabin, searching for an escape from the scrutiny of hundreds of eyes, and the thousands more watching online. Marcus checked his watch again. Exactly 12 minutes had passed since he had first sat down, right on time, and with a simple flick of his wrist, he lifted his phone once more and gave the order. "Ground this plane." The announcement came seconds later, jolting every passenger. "Ladies and gentlemen, we regret to inform you this flight will be delayed indefinitely. Please remain seated until further notice." The murmurs turned into shouts of disbelief, but in seat 2A, Marcus leaned back in calm authority, every inch the man who commanded empires. The plane was grounded, the storm had broken, and Jessica and Captain Morrison were about to learn the price of underestimating the man they tried to strip of dignity. The announcement hit the cabin like a lightning strike. A grounded flight was no small matter. Passengers groaned, complained, whispered to one another, but every pair of eyes kept circling back to Marcus in seat 2A. Somehow, everyone knew the delay had everything to do with him. Captain Morrison's jaw tightened. His authority was slipping through his fingers, and the man in the immaculate suit before him seemed to hold all the strings. "Mr. Williams," he said stiffly, "with respect, disrupting this flight isn't going to help anyone." Marcus's gaze was level, unblinking. "This flight was disrupted the moment your gate agent decided I didn't belong here. The moment you entertained her bias instead of shutting it down." His voice didn't rise, yet the entire cabin leaned closer, as if pulled into the gravity of his words. "I gave you 12 minutes to show me what kind of captain you are. You failed." Jessica swallowed hard, her bravado completely gone. She looked small now, shrinking under the weight of her mistake. Marcus stood, slow and deliberate. He adjusted his cufflinks, glanced once more at his watch, then turned to the captain. His words were calm, almost merciful, but they struck with the finality of a judge's gavel. "Captain Morrison," Marcus said, his voice carrying over the murmurs, effective immediately. "You're relieved of duty." The cabin gasped in unison. For a moment it seemed impossible. Who had the authority to fire a pilot mid-flight preparation? Who could ground a plane with a single phone call? But the proof was standing there, and the realization spread like wildfire. Marcus wasn't bluffing. He was exactly who he claimed to be. The captain's face went pale. He opened his mouth to protest, but the intercom crackled before he could speak. A firm, unfamiliar voice echoed through the cabin. "This is ground control. Captain Morrison, you are hereby ordered to disembark immediately. A replacement crew is en route." The silence that followed was deafening. Passengers stared as Captain Morrison, his face stiff with humiliation, removed his cap and turned toward the exit. His boots echoed against the narrow aisle as he walked away, stripped of authority in front of those he once commanded. Jessica followed, her hands trembling, her once clipped steps now hesitant and unsteady. Marcus remained standing in the aisle watching them go. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. Power didn't need theatrics. It revealed itself in silence, in action, in consequence. Finally, he turned back to the passengers, many of whom were still recording, their live stream numbers skyrocketing into the millions. His voice was steady, reassuring, as though he were speaking to shareholders instead of stranded travelers. "I apologize for the inconvenience you've all endured," he said. "This flight will continue shortly with a new crew. You have my word. And if any of you ever feel you've been treated as though you don't belong, remember this moment. Dignity cannot be assigned. It cannot be taken away. It is yours, always." Applause broke out, not from all, but enough to ripple through the cabin like a current. For the first time since boarding, Marcus sat back down in seat 2A, calm, unshaken, entirely in command. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting streaks of gold across the runway. Inside, the passengers whispered to each other in awe, their phones buzzing with breaking news alerts. And though Marcus never once raised his voice, he had reshaped the flight, the story, and the lives of those who had witnessed it. Not with anger, not with force, but with the quiet, undeniable power of a man who knew exactly who he was. And for Captain Morrison, his career had ended not with turbulence in the air, but with silence on the ground. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.